Blessings, everybody.
Welcome.
Tonight we are going to be talking about Christopher Pensack. We're going to be talking about the core concepts and personal experience with the Hallows of Witch by Christopher Pensack. We are going to be talking to Monica Tyler. She just got initiated back as a high priestess back in June. Oh, no, I'm sorry, in May. In June, she got her ordainship. She's also the Deputy of Media and Communication for the temple. And we'll also be talking to the priest, Silver Dragon Hawk, on the same subject. So please come and join us. But further ado, I want to introduce my handsome cousin Nico.
I guess.
Sometimes he's MIA, so I'm always happy when he comes on. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the core principles. So just give me a moment here. Hello,
Hello.
Silver Dragon, and hello, Monica.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Um, this is a version of Lessons Told, where we talk about lessons or classes that we have taken before. And tonight, I want to touch base on the TOW, Temple of Witchcraft, because Christopher Pensack is, of course, a wonderful person, great teacher. And you, Monica, have took all 5 courses to become the high priestess and also now the deputy of media and communication to help out with the temple. So I want you to go ahead and get started. Tell us your experience.
Well, welcome everybody. Like Tracy said, my name is Monica Tyler, and I am a member as well of the Temple of Witchcraft. I started my journey with Mystery School back in 2018, and what brought me to the Temple of Witchcraft was actually Christopher Pensack's Mighty Dead workshop. And if you haven't checked that out, it's a great book, and he has also a year-long course, which is fantastic. So I started with the temple with that. That was like my gateway into the Temple of Witchcraft, and I have been a practitioner for many years. But I wanted to deepen my knowledge and understanding of the craft, and I have been looking for a while a practice that would give me the flexibility to work with the spirits that show up for me. And I found that the Temple of Witchcraft was able to provide me with that flexibility to show with the spirits that work and not put any boundaries or restrictions on, well, you have to work with these particular spirits. So I was very appreciative of that. As I started my journey with Mystery School, I started to see how much I really didn't know and all the new things that you get to explore and discover in your own experimentation, as well as going through theory, which is what I absolutely love about Mystery School through the Temple of Witchcraft. Is that yes, you do have lessons, but then you also have exercises and you have different focuses, and you get to really experiment, be a magician, be a priestess, be an ecstatic worker. You are able to put all these different hats upon you and find what works for you, find what you really enjoy, what fulfills you, and then you can add that to your own personal practice. So everybody's personal practice is just a little different, but I like that. I like that very, very much. I know that you guys wanted to talk about the Hallows of the Witch, correct? That's kind of what we wanted to discuss tonight. So the Hallows of the Witch is basically our wand, our the wand or staff, right? Because some people are more geared toward using a staff rather than a wand. You have your athame or your blade, and you have your chalice, right? Or your cup. And some people even may use a cauldron instead of a cup or a chalice. And then you have the stone, crystals, right? Everybody loves crystals, but in this case, we're talking about like an actual stone or patent, right? That has the either the pilgrim or just, a stone that you really, really connect with. So what are the hollows of the witch? Basically, it's your main tools, but with the added connection to that spiritual portion of I would say, a deeper wisdom, right? So if you've been a practitioner for a lot of years, and a lot of people that are not, they do like to accumulate a lot of different things, right? I use this wand, my fire wand, it's my water wand, and this is my wand for, for death work, and so forth and so on. And that's fantastic. But when you turn one of your wands to your hollow, right? To that hollow of the witch, you are actually connecting energetically, spiritually, however you want to see that connection, to the spear of victory. So now it's not just your wand. It's an embodiment. It's a physical anchor to that energy of the spear of victory. So not only, you use your wand to exert your own personal will. However, the spirit of victory is also attuned to that divine will. So that's when that alignment to that divine portion comes into play, which is what, in my humble opinion, augments that energy, right? Because now you're not just aligned with your own true will, but you're also aligned with the highest will. And basically that is what the teachings of the hollow is. Now, one hollow that I haven't mentioned is the crown, right? The crown of humility. Usually people look for that crown because they're trying to connect to be of service, right? When you're an ordained person that you want to build community and you want to be a celebrant and you want to be a leader within, your local community, that's when you really seek that crown of humility, because you want to come from a place of service. And that is, it is a journey to do that. So when you are dealing, for example, you start getting introduced to your tools on the witchcraft too, right? That is called the Outer Temple of Witchcraft. So you go on your quest, right? And they give you ideas like journey. And that is really a physical journey that you're going on, right? You're walking through the forest trying to find that item, whether that's little branch that fell, or is it, a bigger piece that you want to create it into your staff, or you went to the store and all of a sudden you felt really called to this particular Athame or to this particular blade, or, things. It's a very physical thing. And that's how it's introduced, like in that second year of study, right? You're kind of going out into the world and finding your tools physically. And as, spiritual practitioners and magicians, right, we also use our own energy, right, to sense, which one really resonates with me, which one augments my energy, which one is clashing. But it focuses more on that physical aspect of going out and getting that particular tool. And then as you continue your studies, when you arrive to, like, for example, Witchcraft 4, which is the Temple of Witchcraft, which you're kind of going through the Kabbalistic tree of life, right? Then that's when that portion of going into the Hallows comes into play. Because now, when you're in Malkuth, right, when you're in that very first Sephira, now you're connecting to the stone of destiny, right? Now it's not just your paten. Now it's not just your crystal. Now you're attuning to the energies of the stone of destiny. And that stone of destiny expresses sovereignty, right? That's what it is. You're connecting to that power given by the goddess, saying you are sovereign and you are powerful. And so what do you need to do? So you go on a journey, so you go into that ecstatic trance, you go into the heart of the elemental earth, you retrieve that stone of sovereignty. You may be, challenged by spirits of that, you may have to explain yourself. There's maybe trials that you have to go, but your intention and where your heart is that you're going into the heart of that elemental realm to retrieve that, that particular hallow. In this case, we're talking about the stone of destiny. And then once you do, then you create that that link, you anchor it to your own stone of destiny here in this physicality. So, after you do that energetic retrieval, right? Then you kind of come into this reality and you do a simple reconsecration of your tool. You kind of, once again, visualize that tether between your own personal patent or crystal to that hollow. Because, I'm not familiar with, where everybody is in that, but, the stone of destiny is found in many mythology, right? Like the kings had to be able to touch the stone, and all these different things. So usually when you're referring to a hollow, it is an item that is found not just in mythology, but throughout, in cultures. You're going to see that there's always something that is mentioned, and it's a great item of power. Do you have any questions? I'm like,
No, well, of course, like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of Christopher's. He's been on, well, he's coming on again in January, but he's been on once before. We featured the Temple Fest with one of his priestess back in the East. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I love his work and everything. Now, with these classes that you are mentioning with the Hallows of the Witch, there's 4 of them, correct?
There's actually 5. So
5.
if you include the crown of humility, right? If you include the crown, it's 5. But for the first few years, as you're establishing your own personal practice and you're developing yourself, you are first exposed to the 4, right? To the basic 4, which is the stone of destiny, the spear of victory, the cup of compassion, which is the Holy Grail, and the sword of truth. So those are like the basic ones. So you kind of start that work in your second year. And then in your 4th year, as you're going through the different sephiras, there are like the first 4 sephiras of the bottom of the Kabbalistic tree. For example, Malkuth is the stone of sovereignty. You have Had for the sword of truth, Netzach, the spear of victory, and then you have Yesod to retrieve the cup of compassion. And these sephiras are obviously elemental. They're, earth, fire, water, and air. And you perform the same thing, right? Once you get to that particular sephira, you're going to do that journey. You're going to connect to the spirits of this place. You're going to go to the elemental realm, and you're going to do that. And then once you complete those first 4 years with the Temple of Witchcraft, right? The 5th year is left for people that want to become ministers, like high priests, people that want to lead communities. So not everybody is called to do the 5th year, right? Some people just end their journey at the 4th, right? They've completed all 4 elements. Because the first year is the inner temple, and it's based on the element of fire. The second year is the element of earth, and that's why it's called the outer temple. The 3rd year is water, and it's the shamanic witchcraft, so it's all ecstatic practices. And then the 4th year is the element of air, and that's kind of when you go into like the magician, high magic, and dealing with the, going through the sephiras, and doing the Kabbalistic tree. So if you have that base, you're good. You know what I'm saying? You're a well-rounded individual. You don't need, but if you have in your heart that you do want to be of service to the community, then you go on to the 5th year, right? So when you go into the 5th year, the whole time your whole goal is to retrieve that crown of humility. And that crown of humility, it's a process. You really don't retrieve it until the very end of it. And it's, it's you still go and do the journey, and some people read it, some people don't. And even when you're in your 4th year, just because you have your Athame or your spear, when you go in to retrieve that hollow, they may say, we're not ready to provide you with the hollow, right? So there is an alignment. It's called the 5 gift alignment. Have you heard of that? No. So what happens is that if you, let's say you're like, you know what, I am going to turn all my tools into my Hallows of the Witch, right? I'm going to do this. This is the journey that I'm going to do. So your first step is going to be to physically go and do your physical journey, right? You're going to physically go. Find the tool that attunes to you, that calls to you, you know, whatever it is. So you're going to do that first step. Then you're going to attune that tool to that element, right? You want to start learning, you want to start working with it, you want to, you know, attune it. Once you're done attuning, then that's when you go ahead and do that journey to that elemental realm, and you retrieve that hollow, and then you come back into this reality and you reconsecrate your tool, you make it into that anchor, and you know, and basically those are kind of like the steps from taking your, you know, regular wand to now, you know, being considered your own personal hollow of the witch. So that's, you know, like those are like, so then the question becomes like, you know, why would I need for my wand to be the fear of victory, right?
Yeah.
So the reasons we do this is for personal transformation, right? Because, you know, the goal of the witch is to be able to align ourselves, right? To really embody every aspect of ourselves, whether it's, you know, our lower self or our higher self. You know, some people like to call it the higher self, an angel, you know, whatever name you give it. But the whole point is to be able to align yourself and to accept every aspect of you. And when you're able to do that, then you need tools that help you to attune yourself with that as well. You know, and being able to attune your own personal will to the highest will, to the divine will, right? Now, when you're doing your own personal works, right, you're, I would say, a little bit more successful because it comes with the work. I guess that's what it comes down to. Like, just because you did the journey, you know, it doesn't mean that your work is finished, right? Because you have to integrate that alignment of your own personal will or personal power, right, with the sovereignty of the land or the sovereignty of divinity, or that power or that will, or that, you know, you have your inner love for the craft, you know, with just your regular chalice. But now with the cup of compassion, you know, it's expanded, right? Because now it's universal. It's not just, you know, your aspect of it. Now, when people set out to do, you know, this journey, right? Like, I'm going to convert all my tools to the Hallows of the Witch. You know, there is an alignment. And it goes something like this, you know. So I stand upon the stone of sovereignty with a sword of truth by my side. In one hand, I hold the cup of compassion, and in the other, the spear of victory. And I have upon my head the crown of humility, so that I may serve with honor. So what happens is that, let's say if you retrieved one item and not the other, then you can, you know, recite it like, I seek to place upon my head the crown of humility, or I seek the spear of victory. You know, so you can, you know, edit that as you're doing your own personal work, you know, and you attune yourself to those energies and to your tools as well. So I would say when you're doing your your 5 gifts alignments, it's great if you have your tools that you have already consecrated for that work, or if you have a tool that you know has a lot of potential, but you haven't been able to retrieve in vision, right, or in the other world, that hollow, to tie it and to anchor it there, but you still work with it. You know, you still bring that tool to the table and you hold it. And you know what I'm saying? And you really embody that alignment. And I think that as, you know, in your own personal practice, it can really help you transform your own self in, number one, living a more authentic life, right? Feeling empowered to be able to speak your truth. It's not easy, and I think life is very difficult, and it's going to always throw curveballs to you, and it's going to also throw you, of course, but being able to do little things like that, like, doing that 5 gifts alignment, kind of brings you back into balance, or at
Yeah.
least helps you. And when you're struggling in one of those aspects, then you have
Mhm.
a tool that can really be helpful to you to help you get back into where you were, and you kind of fell out of that balance. So, at the end of the day, I see witchcraft as a very personal, empowering practice
Yeah.
that, it's basically self work. That's, a lot of people, that's
It is.
my opinion. That's my opinion.
It very is. Silver Dragon Hawk. Now, how long have you been studying with Temple of Witchcraft?
I had started in 2011, and that's when I first started taking the first course. I'd read through the book ahead of time, the Inner Temple book,
Mm-hmm.
and then I decided, okay, this is it. Second year, a lot of stuff happened in my life, so I didn't get to complete the second year until 2019. Then I got elevated to priest. One thing I'd like to put out is, how you were saying this is attunement, alignment, and how it starts in back in W2. It's like it's true. I mean, some of the exercises that we did, for each tool that we found, we meditated and communed with the spirit of the tool.
Mhm.
And to me, that was that's the first step towards
Mhm.
the path to the hollows. And then the meditating and going through each elemental gateway
Mhm.
to at first, at the time, it was like, okay, yeah, this brings a whole new level to my craft.
Mhm.
It's deeper, it's more personal than it was before. Um, and just so much more empowering. But then after reading the W3 book, W4 book, and the
Mhm.
W5 Volume 1, I came to realize it's like not only is this a journey towards the hollows, but like you were saying, it's a journey of not only empowering ourselves but balancing ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, and know if there's people that have never experienced this before, it's not just doing the work to gain more knowledge and more skill sets. It's also doing the work on ourselves to attain that balance. That's the key to ultimately acquiring the hollow, in my
And that
opinion.
is the hardest part, right? that's where
It's a work in progress.
Working on
always is,
yourself.
right?
Yeah.
It's always a work in progress. You
Working
think you
on
got something
yourself.
figured out, and then life goes like, whoa,
Yeah. Working on yourself is probably one of the hardest part. I know when Chris and I did our first book about science and self, the foundation of witchcraft, people's like they don't understand the science part or the self part. And it's like, okay. So I tried to explain the best way I could in the what do you call it, preface of the book, the introduction and everything. So I'm hoping that people would get it. But yes, it's very important for you to know about yourself. The self part is very important. That's
Well,
true.
I think mystery schools as a whole are, well, I absolutely love them. I've been through 2 different mystery schools at this point, and it's a very interesting balance because it's not just like you're joining a giant coven, which is what some people think they are. You're you're getting into a community of witches, and you can be as involved or uninvolved with it as you please. And some of the people that I know that have joined into the temple aren't really coven witches. They love the community aspects. They get to go in, take workshops, and get involved like Temple Fest and things like that. And then they go home and do their own little witchy thing.
Right.
And it's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I think people kind of sleep on or don't really know about mystery schools.
Yeah.
Like you pointed out, it's, like for those that don't understand or, don't realize or haven't experienced a mystery school, it's, um, like you said, it's a community. The easiest way that I could explain it to somebody who's never experienced it is a mystery school is like an extended family. It's a community where covens, working circles, and that is more focused on specific things. They're more focused on their work, and where the mystery school, it has a broader scope.
Mhm. That's why we incorporate the books, the temple books for our students, to broaden their spirituality, because everybody's going to be from a path. And when we teach from the Sturgeria path, but we also teach a little bit of eclectic too. So, because it kind of brings it all into prospect. You have your foundations, you have your structures and everything, and then you have your path. It's like I tell everybody, the path is yours. You make of it what you want. If you study every day or once a week or whatever, you're putting your best foot forward, doing the work. But if you're just going to read a book and then maybe read another book 6 months later, you're not learning anything really, because you're not putting yourself forward on that. You just want to go outside, worship the full moon, and that's it.
Right. Like you need to, again, you do the theory, but then you have to practice, right? You have to try it out. You have to see how it goes. You have to feel like, what works for you, what doesn't. And that just comes with experimentation. And if you're just kind of reading, but not, experimenting, putting things into action, you're missing out, because really when it comes down to witchcraft, it's both goes hand in hand. Like you have to have that base knowledge, that theory, understanding of the different cultures, how they view and still interact with the same energies, but from their little different perspectives, but until you do it yourself, you're not going to gain that understanding of like, oh, okay, so now I understand, and I think that is the most important thing for a person that wants to really dive into their own spirituality, right? When you really want to go in and, and seek knowledge, you're not seeking, like I always say, if you're seeking knowledge, that's great and dandy, but I am looking for wisdom. I'm looking for experience. I'm looking for that. Not the pretty words, like they're wonderful. I'm not saying the pretty words are not bad. Of course, they're wonderful, but I want my experience, because you have the general gnosis, right? That is shared, and then you have your own personal gnosis. And sometimes as we practice, right, we come across spirit whispers, right? The divine reveals themselves and gives you information that it's yours. But it's not until you really start learning from other people that you're like, wait a minute, that is my personal gnosis, but now it's verified. Because here is somebody else that has had the same experience, that have the same understanding. So obviously, that is not just in my imagination. And I say in quotes, because you have to go, oh, that's just your imagination. No, because other people have had that same experience when encountering the same energy, right? And we don't know each other, but yet here we are having the same experience. So I think that it's wonderful when you have other people that are studying like you, right? And then you can also bounce back, like, hey, this
Oh, yeah.
is how I encountered it. How did you encounter it?
Wow.
Sometimes it can be a very different experience, but sometimes it can have a lot of similarities, and in a way it can help, change that gnosis from your own personal experience to, oh, you know what? Now I understand. Now it's a more generalized thing. Now other people. Nico, you mentioned something very interesting, like you were saying. The Temple of Witchcraft, yes, we do have an online community and people choose how involved they get, right? And what they want to do. And I love that. I love the fact that you're not required to do this or you're not required to do that, right?
Yeah.
You I like to participate in online rituals, so I'm going to participate in the online rituals. You're like, yeah, I like to do my own thing, but I do like the classes. And then there you go, you can have your classes. And with that being said, Christopher does have a 2-hour class on each of the Hallows, and he goes more in depth in each of them. And you can purchase that at the Temple of Witchcraft website. They have like a class shop link, and you can go there and you can put like Hallows of the Witch, and all the links come right up. And you can delve deeper into this concept if that is something you would like to implement in your own personal life.
And that link is floating right below us here.
Yes, you go to that link to the Temple of Witchcraft, and I think it's the 4th link. Let me see. If you go to the Temple of Witchcraft, if you go old, we have 4 columns on the very top, and it's called Shop and Support. If you go down and click on Shop and Support, and you go to the class shop, there you will be able to see. You can just type in, and we have classes. For example, like especially, I love the Dark Moon series. I am a community leader here in Pennsylvania. I have my own temple, the Singing Lotus Temple, and we do things together. But, I always try to, before I used to do new moons, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm leaving new moons off because that's going to be my time. So a lot of the times I dedicate my dark moons to the classes that Christopher Pensac teaches on dark moons because, you're able to explore things that he himself are exploring, right? It's not like, oh, I found this in this book and I am teaching you this that I found in this book. He may share knowledge, you know what I'm saying, that has background information, from different esoteric sources or philosophies and things like that. But at the end of the day, they're very experimental through his own experiences, the things that he's interested in investigating and kind of going a little bit deeper in. And to be able to partake in that is very interesting. I was trying to find it because there was a time, and I was trying to find it because I like sharing like facts, you know what I'm saying? But this time it was the concept of actually mixing and intermingling the Hallows, meaning if you go, right, and you do a journey and all of a sudden now you have, for example, you have the Staff of Victory, which is very much a staff, but it's also known as the Spear of Victory. So it has a blade top, right, which is very similar to an Athame. So now you are combining Sword of Truth with the Spear of Victory and creating a whole new Hallow, right? And so there was that concept, and I was trying to find it, and I wasn't able to, which is why I kind of talked about it, but I didn't want to. But it's an interesting concept. And again, how do you reach these things? Through experience and experimentation. You go and you do your journeys and you put yourself out there and you talk to your tool. You journey to your tool from, a shamanic perspective. We believe that everything is alive and everything has spirit. So each tool that we have is a sentient living thing that, you work in partnership with, right? You don't lord over, but you have a partnership with them. And I find that the tools, when you approach them in that way, they serve you better. And when I say serve you, I'm not talking about, do your bidding, as much as They just are more willing participant in the work you're
Yeah.
trying to accomplish, and be a good ally to you.
And the
So,
energy flows smoother.
yes, you're able to manifest better. You're able to reach your goals a little easier because now you have that wonderful partnership, as opposed to, like a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, some people may confuse, standing in your own sovereignty, being lording over other things, and that's not necessarily what that means. It's about partnering with the natural world, partnering with your tools, partnering with other practitioners. That is
Yeah.
the goal is to really tap into that web of life that includes everything, and to be able to be like, oh, I can tug in this one because I have a friendship and I have a partnership,
Mhm.
and they're more likely to answer my call than if I am just like.
Mm.
So.
And if anybody's ever struggling with the concept of how we work with our tools and with other witches, and like you said, and like you were pointing out, sovereignty, is not being lording over something, but working in partnership with it. Look at pretty much every aspect of our craft, of our paths. It's all about working in partnership.
Mm.
Yeah. Now I know I stepped up for a moment to take a call, and I know you was talking about the website, which is down below, like Nick was, saying. Now on his, I mean, he has a lot of other classes, not just the
There's tons
this.
of classes,
Mhm.
and it's not all of them from Christopher. There's like other classes that are facilitated by other ordained ministries
Yeah.
within the temple. They're all I would say, reviewed, by hand, because he is the lead. So the way the Temple of Witchcraft is assembled, in case for people to not know, there are 12 zodiac signs, right? And each zodiac sign has a ministry. So, and each ministry is responsible for certain things. Christopher is the lead minister of Sagittarius, and that is the teacher. So anything that has to do with teaching and things like that, he oversees. And there are some wonderful classes, not just for the Hallows of the Witch, but there's classes on like we are the craft, that series, especially since you had mentioned Ray Buckland and all of our elders in the craft. Many people have presented on them before, like classes and have guided meditations with them and things like that. You will find those there. There's other series of classes like goddess classes, kind of a different type of
Yeah,
goddess.
I know he has Hecate's Night.
Yes, that's
Uh,
another thing. That's
the
another
Path of the
year-long class,
Moon.
if I'm not mistaken. Yes, correct.
He
And
also has one on the Wheel of the Year, and
Yeah.
so a lot of the concepts in his books, whether it's the Temple series books or other books, a lot of them, these classes came out of that, and they're a deeper dive on each subject. And
correct,
that's
correct.
so amazing.
Yes,
And
which
then the
is
two
it's
art courses
wonderful.
are
Yeah,
those with nuggets stuffed inside them too, where you get like, here's a deep dive into this part of this, and I didn't get this in the book, and this is what I mean, and
correct.
Yes.
So it's nice that it's readily available, right? Like you come to something, you're like, ooh, let me see if there's look, there's a class. Boom, you're able to buy it and kind of go it at your pace. You get usually there's like a recording of the class and you get a PDF. So you have both things. You can read, you can practice, you can see and explore. And again, as a witch and as a high priestess, I consider myself an experimenter. I love, experimenting and checking things out and seeing, how it felt. Because, that's another thing, it's repetition. Don't do it just once, do it multiple times, do it many, many times, because you will have different outcomes, different experiences. And sometimes when you are repeating certain exercises, certain, devotional prayer, alignment, then all of a sudden something new happens. and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, how did,
Well, and
and then now you're able to kind of move further down a little
Yeah.
bit, going to a deeper wisdom, right?
like
Or
you were saying
a deeper
earlier about experiencing things, is also part of our tradition, and that is like, well, all witchcraft. If you think about it, how many times have you learned a new approach, a new technique, a new ritual, whatever, and you're just kind of like, nah, I don't think that's for me. But then later on, you try it, and you're just like, why didn't I try this sooner?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. I have to say there was one exercise that I struggled with so much in witchcraft for. It's called the 4 adorations. Have you guys heard of?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I am not a morning person. Listen, having to get up in the crack of dawn to figure out,
Mhm.
I hate it every minute.
Mhm.
It's again, but it's about like it was a good experience, to do that, to sense the different energies and the different times of the day, and
Mhm.
it's a great thing. Like, okay, so it's not gonna make it to my daily practice, but at least I had that experience. And I always say to people,
Mhm.
even if you like say no, like, well, I really don't want to do that. Just try it. Try the exercise. If you're gonna find some exercise in one of his books, you're safe. You're not gonna be put in a position in which you have to be concerned
Mhm.
that you're gonna hurt yourself. He's very mindful about how he does things. And when he puts out an exercise there, most likely, if you follow instructions, you'll be a-okay. I know that in Witchcraft 3, there was an exercise that I was a little bit concerned at the beginning, and it was a refining energy. And that's because you're eating heavy energy, right? So you're taking all this gunk, right? And you are ingesting it, and then you're digesting it, and then you're releasing it in a refined manner, right? And a lot of people were like, "Ooh, I don't want to take that into myself." And I had my own personal concerns because as a shamanic practitioner, I come to this practice as a shamanic practitioner. I'm like, I don't know that I want, but I'll be honest with you, it helped me physically as well. Like once I started engaging, that mouth and my stomach, like, because
Mm.
you visualize however you need to visualize, but once you start doing that, it actually was helping me digest better. My gallbladder, which I have a lazy gallbladder, my gallbladder started behaving better. I didn't have to take that many enzymes to really digest well and things like that. So, like things, for example, something so simple as that, as refining and eating that heavy energy so you can refine it and send it into the underworld. You're sending it to the underworld as an offering, right? But it has a positive experience for you as well. So now your act of service has also helped you heal, not only, mentally or emotionally, but also physically. So,
That brings me to a question that I've been wanting to ask you.
sure.
So, how has gaining the Hallows and elevating to High Priestess changed your life, your personal practice, and your magic?
It has completely. So just quick feedback. Before I entered the Temple of Witchcraft, right? I had completed a high priesthood program through another temple in Illinois. It's defunct now. As many groups that start and then they fall. And I did my 3 years with them, and then I went into shamanism and I trained with them. And I thought I had a lot of, like I was saying, you don't know what you don't know until you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
And my eyes were so open when I started practicing the mystery school. I hate to use the word practicing but it is true, right? You're learning and then you're applying it, right? You're like practicing, you're doing these things on a regular basis. I find that, number one, better clean practices, right? That's one of the things. That's fantastic because you're not just collecting energy. I mean, you're really protecting yourself in the right way. So the physical impact of your work is now lessened. I'm not saying that there is no physical impact ever. Of course there is, but now you are better apt to handle it. And when you start experiencing impact, you know what to do to remedy it, right? You know how to better take care of yourself. So for me personally, I am a Gemini. I love learning. That's something that I always do, and I will be forever a student because I love learning. Um, but I feel like it made me better, well-rounded, and I had certain fears of certain things, and it's not that I don't have them anymore. It's just that they're more rooted in perspective. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like an irrational fear because of a religion that I was brought in. That like, well, as a child, there was a lot of fear given into
Yeah.
that. Right now, I'm able to step back and say, no, let's it's more rooted. So for me personally, it has made me a better person, just in general, just a better person. I'm more tolerant of a lot of things that before I was like, just cut and be done. Now I'm like, okay, I understand the perspective. I'm able to see things from multiple perspectives, more so than what I was before. It made me a more well-rounded individual, not always relying on the same techniques or on the same things. So as a Gemini, I get very bored very quickly with the same old, same old. So it provided me with the ability to have different things that I can, keep it interesting. Because again, if you're not learning, evolving, and changing, right, it becomes stagnant. And there is a good time of rest. Like, I'm not saying that you have to be in the go, go, go all the time. I take my breaks, but it's good to feel like you're moving forward. And if there is stagnant there, you don't have that. So I feel like the Temple of Witchcraft, the teachings and the practices have provided me with a good platform that allows me, to feel more confident in my everyday practice or in my everyday things. So one thing that as a practitioner before I started with the Temple of Witchcraft that I used to, be a little bit, iffy about is summoning spirits, as a high magician. So not as in like I'm calling my ancestors, I'm calling the god as the god, not in that aspect, but in the aspect of like, doing the actual,
actual spirit work.
right? Like you're doing high magician work and working with the Galatian, things like that. Like I was really concerned about that. And again, we all have our things, and that was one of mine. But then when I did it, it was a positive experience. It was not the negative experience. And I hate to use the word negative because it's not that it was negative, but when you have those apprehensions
Harmful.
and you have those like in the back of your head, like that was appeased more. So like I find that for me personally, going through the whole entire thing of of becoming a high priestess of the temple has given me the confidence to be able to do what I got to do, however it is that I need to do it, to keep it fresh, to keep it exploring, and I think that's really what it comes down to. When you as a practitioner do not feel confident, then you become scared and you start limiting yourself, like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that because and again, you have to do things in safety. Again, I want to reiterate, you don't just go willy-nilly, right? You learn, you practice, and then you experiment. But I do like that. I like the fact that there is not a lot of fear-based teaching. It's like, of course we are human, so of course we have fears, and of course there's energies out there that don't have our best interests at heart, right? And of course there's things that we need to banish and get rid of that can hurt us and harm us. But when you are taught these things and how to better handle them and how to shield, then you feel better about being able to follow your own inner wisdom, right? And you are more apt to listen to spirit when they're saying certain things. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, let me explore that a little bit further and not be so, ooh, I don't want to do that, or that's out of my comfort zone, you know?
Mhm.
So I don't know if I answered your question, Silver Dragon.
Yeah.
But yes, I try to, line with myself, And again,
Yeah.
life is not perfect, so that means that my life is not perfect. But I I feel that I have the tools necessary that when things are not going perfect, that I don't feel defeated. That I'm like, okay, I
Mhm.
can do this. I can implement this change. Or I can, ask this ally for help. I can do this magical work to bring about a positive outcome, whether it's an uncomfortable outcome for me. But it is what it is, the best for me. So, I think that's the best way that I can, explain
No,
it.
I think you explained it just, correctly because, you can tell the passion you have for your craft. I know when sometimes when you get me started, I just keep going on and on because, yeah, the passion's there. And, I think that's great for those of us who has a passion to, keep going on no matter how our personal life is, because we're trusting the Lord and Lady to be with us always. And that's how we should go. I mean, we should go with that and be happy with that. I know Silver Dragon Hawk, we have talked many times about the passion we have and about, the worships we have and everything. And also Nico and I has, really talked about it. We get in depth. That's why we have these lessons told because it's not just giving a class, it's kind of like giving a class on just witchcraft in general, actually. We're not actually giving out secrets or anything, breaking any oaths. We are sharing our passion with everybody.
Mhm.
And that's,
We're also
whether you
presenting
like it or
options.
not.
Mhm.
And the thing is that there's so much of it out there, right?
Yeah.
Like back in the
Yeah.
day when I started, like I remember back in the 90s, we have very few books. It
Mhm.
was like
Yep.
you just had so little options, right?
Yes.
But now there's so much out there, which isn't a bad thing, right? Because there's stuff there that may not be very safe, right?
Mhm.
But then there are certain things that are tried and true. And you know, those are the things that you can, continue on learning,
Mhm.
continue moving
Yeah.
forward, deepening your
Mhm.
own understanding of things.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's really what it comes down to. This is your practice, right? This is your witchcraft.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You hold you hold your destiny, right? You hold how you
Mhm.
move forward. You hold what you
Mhm.
decide to study, what you decide to ignore, what you decide to deal with,
Yes.
you are on the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lovely thing.
Yeah.
It's a lovely
Yeah.
thing because it really allows us to just be,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
just explore and do. And again, it doesn't mean that your life will be, peaches and rainbows and
And
it doesn't
sunshine.
mean that. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that, but it
Yeah.
does mean that in the grand scheme of things, you're not alone. You do
Yeah.
understand. You have a deep understanding
Mhm.
that you have spirit. That spirit is there to be and walk beside you and give
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
feedback and support in different ways that you may not have before thought of. And
Yeah.
I think having that deep understanding is a wonderful thing, to know that you can, when you can't, they can. You just need to call upon them, right? You just call
Mhm.
upon the Lady, the Lord, and that great spirit that moves through us all and just say, hey, I'm struggling. and I need a little bit of TLC, or like,
Yes.
what am I missing? What can
Oh
I
yeah.
do to better my situation, or
Yeah.
to be able to carry this burden, or when we are carrying the burden, how can we better carry it, right?
Hmm.
There are burdens that we have to carry. There is no handing it over to anybody else but us. And at that point, it's how can, what can how
Hmm.
can you help me with this burden? Like, how
Yeah.
can I alleviate it for myself? Still having the ability to take care of myself
Hmm.
as well as carrying this burden. So, you
And I
know,
want to also plug you in, Monica, because you've been having a coven for I think 10 years now.
yeah,
Well, at least as long as I remember and everything.
yeah.
And I know you moved from Colorado to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell the audience before we leave about your coven.
So the Singing Blue Lotus Temple is, my pagan temple. We founded it back in Colorado when I was living in Colorado, and I moved here to Pennsylvania in 2020. And then that was in the middle of COVID, so a lot of things had to go online. But once things kind of reopened, we reestablished ourselves here. We're a nice group of people. I do love the community here as well. And we are a small group. We're about 20 of us. And there's always, there, like I was saying, we have temple members and we have temple friends. So there's people that, they want to come and go and say, please, and that is totally okay because we're here for community. We do celebrate the Sabbath together. We do full moons. So if it falls on the weekend, we do it in person. If it falls during the week, it's online. We do have, local classes, but the local classes are more geared to crafty stuff. So we kind of, make your own drum or make your tools or, things of that nature. Um, and what else? We do have like social events. So we have something called the Witches Gathering, which is we just come together and hang out. And we do divination, before the night is over. But it's not like we call it round robin. So everybody has their deck. Somebody asks a question. We all kind of pull. We all kind of, it's just a community thing,
Mhm.
as opposed to like one-on-one or, pairing up. We also have a witchy book club. So we meet once a month and we discuss, different witchcraft books because, just like Tracy said, it's important to read other people's books as well and see, well, like, oh, this is
Yeah.
interesting. This is a new thing. I've never really thought about it this way.
Yeah.
And, we do tend to have, we are a pretty active community. I should say that. Locally, we're a pretty active community. We usually gather maybe like 5 times a month, doing one thing or another. But, we are part of the Temple of Witchcraft in the sense that, my pagan temple is part of the tradition. As the high priestess of that temple, we follow the core practices and, and teachings of the Temple of Witchcraft. So, that's what we do. But well, thank you. So if you're in Pennsylvania and you're southeast Pennsylvania, because we're, down in the Reading area, come and visit us, come and check us out.
Yeah. And you can find Monica on Facebook even. Um, and you can find also Silver Dragon Hawk on Facebook as well. If you would like to contact these two lovely people, but if you are having some issues, please contact us at Within the Cauldron Glow at gmail.com. It's on our YouTube channel, and we'd be happy to connect you with Monica or with Silver Dragon Hawk. Um, and I wish we can go on forever because I love talking, And Monica, how we can talk sometimes. We did for hours. So
Yeah,
did
true.
yeah. Silver Dragon Hawk, you too. We can always talk. And of course, Nico and I, we never shut up. So but I would love to have you both on again sometime, either together or separate. We do Witchy Men Talk and Witchy Women Talk, and we're going to also just combine talk, just witchy talk.
Awesome.
men and women. So blessings to everybody who has tuned in to Within the Closet. Be safe, be kind, subscribe, like, and share out, please. Until next time, many, many blessings. Love you all. Good night.
Good night. Blessed
Good
be.
night.
Godspeed.